Welcome to Bellas Fashionistas Home Edition. I am your host, Fleriser Bello. It is a pleasure to have you join us on this beautiful afternoon. We trust that you and your loved ones are well and staying safe. In today's Bellas Fireside Chat conversation, we welcome actress, speaker, and author of Embracing Me, a memoir that speaks about resilience, forgiveness, and overcoming adversity. Please join me in welcoming Latina trailblazer and Puerto Riqueña, April Hernandez-Castillo. April, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure to have you at Bellas Fashionistas, April. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. April, you have been a Latina trailblazer that has been working in the big screen for many years now. Please share with us how you were able to land a career in the entertainment industry.
Well, my name is April Hernandez-Castillo. I am an actor, speaker, author, and I'm a creative being. I am a dreamer. I'm a Bronx girl, mother, wife, sister. So I became an actor really by mistake, or it wasn't something I was searching for. I went to college. I went to Hunter College. I wanted to become either a nutritionist or an athletic trainer because I was always into sports. And then I walked into chemistry class and I walked right out because I was like, this beautiful face does not do science. Science just was not my strength. And so I knew I had to find a class. I had to find an elective. And I walked into acting 101. And from then on, I changed my major and I just started pursuing acting. And coming from a typical Latino home, my mother and my dad looked at me like if I had, 10 heads. When I said, Mom, I think I want to become an actor, she was like, ¿Qué actor? ¿Qué ni actor? ¿Qué eso? And she was like, act like you know what to do and throw the garbage away. So, like, that's just what it was. And I feel as Latinos, we're colorful and we have actors in our family, right? I feel like everyone is over dramatic and we're great storytellers. I think that's what makes us so powerful, is the ability to share our stories. So that's how I became an actor.
How you were able to ultimately land your first opportunity in showbiz?
Growing up, like I said, arts wasn't something that wasn't a culture in my family. It wasn't until I saw John Leguizamo perform in Mambo Mouth. Now I'm dating myself. So for those millennials who are like, what is Mambo Mouth? It was his first one-man show. And I remember my brother brought home a VHS. Now I'm really dating myself. Where it was, I was blown away by John's performance, and something ignited this fire. And then I remember seeing Jennifer Lopez in Living Color for the first time. And when I heard that she was Puerto Rican from the Bronx, I didn't know what to feel. I felt like, oh my goodness, if she could do it, I could do it. And it goes hand in hand with, if you can see it, you can believe it. It's one of those of like, if I can see myself resembled in something, then it gives me hope that it is possible. So, but it wasn't something that I was still pursuing. And like I said, once I went to Hunter College, I went there for sports. I played softball. And then as I started taking theater, my major became theater. I just started auditioning, and many people don't know this, but I did stand-up comedy for like an entire year. I really thought that I was going to be a stand-up comedian. My dream was to always be on SNL. So hopefully one day I can at least host SNL. It's still around, thank God. And it just was this tumbleweed, right? It just kept going. I booked one job, I booked another job. I booked my first guest starring role, which was Law and Order. And then I booked Freedom Writers.
How was that first experience working in the industry? I know that you were able to do some stuff in Hollywood as well. Share with us more about that experience.
I mean, it was everything that you would hope it to be. Especially, you just go for it. I think anyone who is a creative especially in the sense of like being an artist, dancer, singer. Hollywood is always the place that you want to conquer. And it took me a little time to get there. Thank God I had really good mentors who kept saying, go there when the time is right. Go there when you have work, because it is a completely different world. I believe, you know, I struggled a little because culturally it was just something I was not used to. And, you know, coming from the Bronx and having like this toughness, and this honesty that doesn't really exist in Hollywood because everyone has this facade. And as a New Yorker, you just don't have any hair in your tongue. You just speak your mind and they think that you are aggressive and you're like, no, I'm real. It was just something where, you know, at the end of the day, you're living your dream. And I remember one of my favorite things was always, you know, I worked on Dexter for a whole season, season 5. And every time I would leave the studio, I would always see the Hollywood sign. And it just always makes me giddy. Every time I see the sign, every time I land in LA, and it's been a while since I've been back there, it's just a great place to be, especially when you can find a tight circle, because LA is just so, you know, so spread out and everybody's busy. But just working and being in Warner Brothers Studios, I mean, you're literally walking on the ground of legends, you know, from Marilyn Monroe to the Rat Pack to all of those people that I admire. So I was always blown away, and I still am. It's easy to become jaded because it is such a tough business. Because half of the time you're not really working, you're not living this fabulous life unless you get to, you know, you get to that place like a Jennifer Lopez or whoever. But that doesn't really happen for most actors. Like just constantly hustling, and you're going to audition after audition, and you know, you're always seeking that one job that hopefully you think is going to get you to the next level, and sometimes it doesn't work out that way. I've done projects where I was like, oh, this is going to elevate me, and I'm going to forget it. I'm going to be like living in the mansion. But sometimes it doesn't work out, and I don't know why, but that's just how life can be sometimes.
Latinos are misrepresented in the entertainment industry. Why do you think that is for Latina or Latino to be able to continue to grow in bigger roles in the entertainment industry?
I mean, I don't really like to focus on being a Latina. I think it's just being a woman.
Okay.
You know, I really think it's just being a woman, but we've progressed so much. Now you're seeing more and more women direct. I mean, Wonder Woman was directed by a woman, which is totally awesome. And we're seeing more and more women on sets. We're seeing more women direct, co-produce, more writers. When it comes to being Latino, I think we're finally like making our way. I don't know what it is. I truly believe, to me, what I have observed has been the unification, right? There's a unity that people like to assume that there is amongst Latinos in Hollywood, but there really isn't.
Okay.
Now, this might just rub people off the wrong way, but it really is true. I think it's because we're so different, right? We're Latino, but yet everyone is so different. So you could be Dominican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, you know, Venezuelan. My husband is Nicaraguan, and yet we practically might not even speak the same language, but we do. So sometimes I just think that there's loss of translation. So how do we bring these stories that represent everyone? So the majority of the Latino stories that have been on television or been on movies has always been of Mexican, right? Puerto Rican, but let's say if I'm Puerto Rican or if I'm a Cuban, I don't really identify with that. And Hollywood, I think, is now beginning to see that we are more than just Mexican. And shout out to my Mexican brothers and sisters out there. I'm not trying to put them down. I'm just saying that this is the reality. A lot of us actors get pigeonholed. You know, I'm Puerto Rican, but it's always I'm getting a Mexican role. And I'm like, man, I want to be able to play like someone who's actually Puerto Rican. You know, whether that's a New Yorican or someone from Puerto Rico or someone who's Cuban and who's Afro Latina, right? I think that that's where we're struggling. But I also believe that that's where we're progressing. That Hollywood is beginning to look at us and saying, okay, you're not just one thing. So that to me has been the struggle. that I've noticed. But hopefully, that really changes.
Just like you said, perfectly said, that they don't know about the additional Latinos come from South America, Caribbean.
And you also, right, you have these millennial Latinx who some of them don't even speak Spanish, and they're very American. So how do you connect? How do you find that balance? How do you bring stories that make sense for someone who can identify, once again, a Latino from New York is completely different from a Latino in LA. Their vibe is just different. It really is. Like, I've seen it as a speaker. I've done a lot of my speaking in the Midwest. Completely different vibe. To them, I'm a lot, because I come with this energy, and I realize that, it's just a different culture. So I think it's just understanding the cultures, and also just having people in the rooms that look like us that can write our stories. It's just understanding the different languages and just the little street talks that maybe someone who is white may not understand.
Thank you for sharing that. For those that do not understand the recent Emmys, right? There wasn't Latino representation there. There's so many Latinos out there making things happen.
Here's my strife with that. At the end of the day, as much as we need representation, right? They always saying that the Oscars was too white. At the end of the day, you have to also make a product, a movie that people are going to watch. You can have 10 Latinos writing or 10, Black writers, but if you're not making a movie that is worth Oscar worthiness, it's not going to get in there. It just isn't. So that's always been my strife when people are like, oh, it's too white, it's too this. And I'm like, dude, if you write a script, if you shoot a film and it is not Oscar worthy, you're not going to get in. That's just plain and simple. Do they need more inclusion? Absolutely. Do they need more diversity? Absolutely. But it also just comes down to having a really good movie to shoot.
We will take a quick break, and when we return, April will discuss her book, soon to be launched towards the end of November, Embracing Me, a memoir that speaks about resilience, forgiveness, and overcoming adversity. Don't go anywhere.
TV news, radio reports, and newspaper headlines in the 1970s and 80s misrepresented communities in the borough of the Bronx. Then, something transformative happened. By, for, and about the Bronx, BronxNet was born.
We are BronxNet!
BronxNet provides media education,
opening the doors to competitive careers in the media industry
for thousands of students in middle school,
high school,
and college. BronxNet.
Welcome back. April, speak to us more about your memoir, Embracing Me, a book that speaks about resilience, forgiveness, and overcoming adversity.
Initially, when I began writing, at first I have my first book, Your Voice, Your Choice. And during quarantine, I thought, well, what could I do? I have time, not really, because I was homeschooling and it was just insane. So my publisher and I were looking at it, and we thought, well, we'll just re-edit some of it and just, add a chapter. But as we kept going through it, Roy Juarez Jr., who's my publisher, said, there's so many parts of your life that you left out. There's so many things that, you didn't get to write, or why didn't you? That's my daughter sneaking in. And I thought to myself, like, wow, okay, I never really spoke about what it was like becoming an actor. I never really spoke about just other private things, especially my faith. And I thought, okay, let me just do this. And it's been 7 months that I've been working on this. Every page that is written, every word, it is me. It's not a ghostwriter. I have amazing editors. I've been involved in the entire, just really putting it together. And so it's been a labor of love. Someone recently asked me, oh gosh, it must be so liberating. And writing, it actually could be very lonely, because it's just you and a computer and your thoughts. And I would usually write from about 10 p.m. to about 3 a.m. That was the only time where I had silence. And, you're rehashing things that happened to you in the past. I do talk about my abuse. And so it was intense. It was intense, but it's such a beautiful memoir. And going back to our conversation about us writing our own stories, I am doing that. You know, I am not going to be on the sideline to say, well, I wish I could have read this kind of story. I have written my story, and now I am ready to release it to the world.
Why speak about resilience, adversity, and overcoming adversity? What is there that you want to be able to tell the audience about this book?
I feel in the climate that we are in today, with just racial tension, with having a leader who doesn't really lead this country the way that he's supposed to, being in a place that so many of us right now, at this very moment, are facing adversity that we have never, ever faced before. And it is something where when you read someone else's story, when they've been transparent, when they have been honest, it gives them a sense of hope. It gives them something to hold on to. I feel like, you know, when everything else is going bad, sometimes a meme, right, can get me through a day. Sometimes when someone posts something on Instagram and it's a message where you go, oh, I needed that to get me through. Sometimes we just we need to let them know that you can get through this. Forgiveness, man, I learned long ago that forgiveness is a process. I feel like so many people have a hard time not only forgiving either someone that hurt them or something that has happened, but also forgiving themselves. And that has been the journey of my life. There were certain things that I unfortunately went through where I had to forgive myself, and it took me a very long time. And so that's the thought of embracing, right? Embracing is continuous, just like Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. She is continuously becoming a different kind of woman. I have gotten to a place where I've embraced everything that I would like to embrace, but I know that there will be more. And there's something beautiful about embracing someone. Really, you know, it's acceptance, it's love, it's understanding, it's empathy, it's sympathy. And that's what I hope people walk away with.
What are some of the tips that helped you move forward and overcoming adversity?
Embracing Me, it's a memoir, right? It's not a self-help book, so it's more of a story, instead of like, oh, do this, do that. But the things that helped me was, number one, I had to just face myself. Really, I had to face everything that I was running away from, and that's self-awareness. That's really number one. It is self-awareness, is becoming aware of all the things that may be causing you anxiety. You know, so many people talk about anxiety these days, and I'm not saying that people are not experiencing real anxiety, but sometimes we have to look at what are some of the things that are causing this anxiety, and is it really worth our time? Where are we paying attention to? So number one is just self-awareness. Okay, what am I running away from? What has traumatized me that I have not dealt with? And when we think of trauma, it doesn't always have to be this boogeyman. It doesn't always have to be so intense. It can be very simple. It could be someone, you know, told you to never speak because your voice doesn't sound good. It could be, you know, something like that, where someone doesn't even have the confidence to speak up because they heard when they were a child that their voice didn't matter, right? And so that continues throughout their life. It's facing something like that. Or if you want to take it to the extreme, it's someone who's been sexually abused, physically, mentally, whatever that is for you. As myself, I'm a survivor of teen dating violence. I had a tumultuous relationship with my mother, which I talk about in the book. And it really affected me as a woman. You know, it affected me in every way, because I think, you know, when you have a relationship with your mother and it is not what you dream of it to be, it really affects you in every way. You know, I always felt like I wasn't good enough for her. Nothing I did was ever satisfying to her. So I was constantly seeking confirmation, and that really affected me. It affected me to the point where, you know, my identity, I talk about having an identity crisis where, acting to me gave me such validation that when it wasn't all glitz and glamour, it really affected me deeply, where I went into a heavy depression. So I talk about all these things, having an identity crisis, and not just gender. Because I think now when we hear identity crisis, we automatically assume that it's with gender. And no, you can just have an identity crisis of like, okay, I'm a mom. Am I more? I can't just be a mom. So those are some of the things that I talk about. So self-awareness, really, and then forgiveness, forgiving yourself, forgiving whoever hurt you, not because, and forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation, right? Just because I forgive you doesn't mean that we're gonna like go have some coffee. It's just giving me the freedom that I need to move forward.
Thank you for sharing the ways that you were able to identify self-awareness. Tell us what kept you moving and how were you able to keep that resilience and that has helped you to move forward in life?
I think number one is part of just my DNA, right? It's my mother, as much as our relationship was intense and complicated. She literally was like the most complicated person I've ever known in my life. But she also gave me the fight, right? She taught me to always fight for what I believe in, and just believing like I deserve whatever I deserve. I always ask the question, why not me? Right? So if I saw someone doing something that I thought, man, if they can do it, why can't I do it? Right? And so it was even down to doing my TED Talk. I did a TED Talk last year. That was a huge accomplishment. Once again, Latina, there aren't many Latinas or Latinos, Latinx, however you identify, on that kind of stage. So to be invited, and I spoke about, my speech was called The Gift of Transparency, and speaking about motherhood. And it was something I manifested. And I said, why can't I be on that kind of stage? So it's always just me saying, how can I grow? How can I be better? How can I outdo myself? I'm in competition with me. I'm not in competition with anybody else. You're right. There's a gazillion speakers, there's a gazillion authors, but there is only one me. And I don't mean that in a cocky way. I just mean that in a very self-aware of like, I'm in competition with myself.
Did you ever felt like giving up at any moment when you were writing this book? Did you get frustrated? Did you say, why am I doing this?
I told my friend, I said, I feel like a rapper about to drop an album that is the most personal. When you hear rappers say, this is probably my most personal work. This is the most personal piece of art that I have created since creating my daughters. It's one of those moments where you put your heart and soul to it. You hope that people will see you and understand the decisions that you've made. I'm completely transparent. I talk about things that happen to me in the hopes that it will bring light, for some people who've been in the dark. Yeah, there were moments where, because of being so tired, working through a pandemic, working through, my own mental health, knowing that there was this quarantine happening, keeping my daughter focused on school, continuing to be a wife, a mom. Like, I'm a mom, I'm all these things. And it's something where it's the hardest thing, even right now, like my daughter's having, this is what I would go through. I would wake up, go to sleep at 4 to wake up at 7 a.m, lacking sleep. The lack of sleep really does mess with your psyche. And so I stopped living up to the expectation of, this whole thing of what successful people do. They wake up before everyone does and they get work done. That's awesome. Not for me. I said, I'm successful no matter what. And I write when I write, and I work when I work, and I'm not going to allow anyone to put that kind of pressure. I just think that, social media has created this, that, everyone who becomes an entrepreneur is living this amazing life. Like, it's one of the scariest things. You're an entrepreneur yourself. People don't see the process. They just see the product. Right? So everyone's going to see this amazing book that I've written, and the cover is beautiful, but you have no idea the process. We are, we are enamored with the product. But I personally enjoy hearing about people's processes.
When should we be expecting to have the books in our hands?
Definitely by November. Like I said, some of the dates kept being pushed back. One, because just of life, things were happening. Also, mailing with the pandemic has been very weird, and people have been getting mails deliveries late. So definitely by November, people will have the book. We are in pre-order right now, which is amazing, and it's been selling and it's been doing great. The first batch of books, they will be autographed by me, and they will be a hardcover, but that's just until, I think, hopefully by the first week of November, I will end the deadline. It'll be a deadline. And then after that, it'll be soft cover. And I eventually want to do the audio. Apparently, a lot of people listen to audiobooks. I don't listen to audiobooks. I don't know if I can listen to someone read to me for 150 pages. But yeah, everyone was like, oh my goodness, I listen to audiobooks all the time. You're an actor. And I will. So the audiobook I plan to put out next year.
What should we expect when reading your book?
It should feel like a movie when you're reading this book. It has a great flow. It has, the beginning of where I grew up in the Bronx, and some of my friendships that really shaped my life. Then you go into some of the heavier moments. Then you go into lighter moments. And really, it's just a roller coaster. I think people are going to be surprised. I think they're going to hear my voice. It's as if they're just having some coffee and I'm right next to them, especially if you grew up in New York City. There are things that I speak about, like the chancleta, my mother's bata. And so if you're Latino, you are going to automatically identify with that. And then just, I really talk about what it was like of me becoming an actor. And it's just so much fun. Erin Gruelle, who the movie Freedom Writers is about, she actually wrote my foreword. I wanted to mention that. And she's been such a blessing, and it's been so cool to have her in my life for so long. So she has honored me with her presence with writing the foreword. She doesn't do that much. And so the moment I asked her, she said, absolutely. And it's just coming full circle. So it's an adventure. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you will think. You will look into yourself and say, okay, where are the areas in my life that I need to embrace myself?
April, do we see you writing a script and turning this into a movie?
I mean, if someone like Tyler Perry or, Oprah wants to make my book and buy the rights, as long as I have executive producer credits, I'm fine.
For more information about the book and to contact you, where can you be contacted?
To stay connected with me, it's on Instagram at April L. Hernandez. LinkedIn is April Hernandez-Castillo. If they want to order the book, they can go to ahcspeaks.com and you can just pre-order the book there. ahcspeaks.com.
Thank you so much, April, for joining us today. It is a pleasure to have you at Bellas Fashionistas.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Bellas Fashionistas TV and our media partner at BronxNet TV. To watch more of our programming, please visit our websites at bellasfashionistas.com and our media partner at bronxnet.org. Please be safe. Have a great day.